Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 16 of Words on Whiskey. That's hard to believe that we're running 4 months, but that's the reality, which is great. And thank you very much for your support and all your comments about the shows to date. And as always, what we're going to do is we're going to kick off with the news, and we'll just kick off with some new releases first. And the first release of the week is a Hyde release from Hibernia Spirits. It's Hyde number 9. It's a single malt finished in Tawny port casks. And it's 8-year-old, finished for 9 months in the Tawny port casks from Portugal. And it's retailing for €50. Available from Irish Malts and Celtic Whisky Shop, and bottled at 43% ABV and non-chilled filtered. So that might be an interesting one to sip alongside maybe the Liberator, which is another Tawny port finish. And then Intrepid Spirits have released a 17-year-old single malt finished in Cadillac French oak casks. 17 years old, €170. It's their third in the series of the Legacy Reserves. This one's bottled at 46% ABV, again, non-chill filtered, and limited to 1,000 bottles. So that's a pretty rare one. And then the last one that's been released is the Lambay Whiskey Malt Irish Whiskey. And this is unusual in, I think it must be the first that is it is a blend of at least malts from 3 different distilleries. Some of them are double distilled, some are triple distilled. It's bottled at 43% and retails at €50. If you're a fan of cognac finishes, then this is definitely one to try, and a very, very good price. Initially, that's going to be available from irishmalts.com before it finds its way into the marketplace and specialist off licenses. And then I suppose the sad news, really, from Dublin's point of view, is that the pubs that were expected to be opening this week or next week on the 21st look like they're not going to go ahead, sadly. So what can you say about that? The wet pubs will not be opening in Dublin. The rest of the country, I think, is okay. Hopefully things will improve. I know there's been a rapid increase in the number of casualties, so our sympathies are with the pub people, and hopefully we'll see better days soon. So in terms of news, that's about it this week. We're delighted to be joined by, I suppose, a veteran of the Irish drinks industry. So I'll just bring him in now and welcome Pat Rigney. Good evening, Pat. Welcome.
How are you? Thank you very much.
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm well, pretty good. All things considered.
All things considered. I know you had a long day today, so we won't overburden you today. But I was going to introduce you as a veteran in the drinks industry, and of course your latest project, and I think the one that's a passion project for you, and certainly hugely beneficial to the Leitrim community. And Drumshanbo is the Shed Distillery, which I know opened last week. How has that been going, and how have you been able to cope with the COVID restrictions?
Well, we opened on the 10th to the public, so we had hoped to open back in June, and
Yes.
Due to COVID, the building was delayed. So we managed to open on the 10th. We're what you call FOLGIA COVID approved. So from a visitor point of view, there's some comfort in that. So far, there's been, it's been very well received locally. There's a very nice trickle of folks coming in to go on the tours, visit the shop, visit the cafe, the Jackalope Cafe. So very early days, but so far I think we couldn't be happier.
Yeah. Well, I have to commend you on firstly deciding to go ahead with it, and secondly managing to actually open so promptly, really, considering everything that's all the restrictions that are in place. So I'm certainly looking forward to coming down and having a look. And from the photos I've seen, it looks amazing resource for the for the county and for Connacht as well. So congratulations on that.
Thanks very much, Sergio.
Yeah.
Listen, it was a huge team effort. Obviously a big vision for it to really be a destination and to, make a statement about how committed we are to our brand, to the community. Yeah. So we did go ahead. It's very encouraging. We just have to get through the next 6 to 12 months of COVID and come out the other side.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll come back and talk about the Shed Distillery later on. But I wanted to go back because you are in the industry, in the drinks industry for 30 years, and you played a very prominent role in the drinks industry. But how did you get involved firstly? So I know you studied in UCD and you did commerce, and from there, how did it end up? I mean, you're a Dublin man.
Yeah.
Grew up in Dublin. You went to Sanford.
Went to Sanford Park, and listen, it's a complete act of God, like a lot of things in my life. I just knew I didn't want to be an accountant. So I ended up doing the BCom, and marketing, back in the early 80s was a very kind of general area. Very few people knew anything about it. And there was a job in Clonmel in Grants of Ireland Sharings when I was coming out of college, and I got the job as a graduate trainee, and I was very fortunate to work there for a number of years, where they literally trained me in the basics of marketing on, that was back in the days of Harvey's Crystal Cream.
Right.
They were Carolyn's Irish Cream at that time around the world. They had Bulmers, they had Baby Sham, they had all sorts of interesting brands. And then very soon after that, I went to Gilbey's. And Gilbey's back then, Gilbey's and Bailey's were interlinked. So Gilbey's was the domestic operation. They were a very, very substantial organization at that time. And again, I went into brand management and worked on some of the key brands. And then I went back down to Clonmel, and I worked on the export side with Carolyn's Irish Cream.
Okay.
At that point, they purchased Irish Mist, so I got an international perspective, particularly on a brand that was, Carolyn's was very much what I would call a push brand at that time. You really had to go out and make the thing happen. If it wasn't on the shelf at the right price and you weren't doing the basics, you didn't get the business. So I learned the real basics of the business. Yeah. And then I went back to Gilbey's and on to Bailey's on the international side for 10 years. And that was...
As a director, yes?
Well, initially starting off at a relatively, junior level, and then very quickly moving along. I became a director of the company. But I was looking after about half the business when I left. And during that time, I created Sheridans when I was there. That was a very exciting time because Bailey's in those days, the complete business was managed in Ireland. So the CEO managed the production, the sales, the marketing, the finance. It was completely integrated. Yes. And so we really had our hand on the pulse. And
that's something very rare these days, isn't it? To see, sales, production and marketing all within the one house.
It is rare. And I suppose at the Shed Distillery, although we're very modest in size, I think it gives us a huge advantage that we see everything that's happening. Or, we're, really connected, between the consumer and the production end. Whereas, the larger companies, the way they've developed, they kind of split the production up and the marketing up and so on. And it's harder to manage the whole thing, in my opinion.
Yeah. But, you spent 10 years in Bailey's, and Bailey's, obviously, for a period, was it the number one selling liqueur in the world?
It certainly was. And I believe it may still be the number one selling liqueur.
I know it kind of sways between that and Tia Maria, is it?
Well, they'd be well ahead of Tia Maria. It might be Jägermeister or something like that.
Right.
Oh, I think they're still number one. Wow. But it was a very exciting time. I mean, I described them as the Google heads of the time. They were ahead of their time in many ways.
Yeah.
And what started off very much as an innovation in terms of liquid, very quickly became transformed into an international brand, where at consumer level, building up loyalty and driving that forward, so that it would be sustained over many years. So, the guys did an amazing job, And
well, I mean,
and
you brought out Sheridans out of there as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. And what was interesting at the time, you were allowed to develop a new brand idea within that company, assuming it was a reasonably good one, and to see it through. So that's where Sheridans came from. So that was kind of a mad experience. But
that was a 300,000 bottles a year product, wasn't it?
I think they got it up to about 250,000 cases. So,
all right, okay.
So I don't know where it is today, but
the latest I've seen is 300,000. But yeah, I didn't realize it was. Yeah, interesting.
But it was anyway. I learned a lot from that.
Yeah, actually, interesting enough, in the next issue we have a piece about Bailey's, because Bailey's, it did have an impact on the whiskey industry, and certainly used a lot of the whiskey that was being produced at the time.
It did. And when Bailey's came to the market, I mean, again, the story, I suppose, it gets lost because it's a while ago, but women weren't really consuming a huge amount of alcohol when Bailey's came to the market. So initially became a tipple primarily for females who wanted to enter the market, and then obviously became much broader than that.
Yes.
So it was, and obviously on the whiskey side, in the early days initially, obviously the whiskey going into Bailey's was a very significant part of the brand. It still is today.
I think even the dairy that was being used as well was a significant part, wasn't it?
Yes, and yes, the dairy, the cream, all the various ingredients. I mean, everything was done at a very, very high level. Great quality, great team, but very much focused on delivering the consumer something very indulgent, something very special, and that would be a successful brand on a global basis. And they've managed to do that, and they've managed to sustain that over the years, which is a tribute to everybody involved over the period.
There is a book that I've been pointed in the direction of called That Shit Will Never Sell. I don't know if you've come across it. Based on the Bailey's sales. So
yes. I've heard a bit about that book, but I haven't read the book myself. But what I would say is the people who really created that brand and really drove that brand were based in Dublin. They were, David Dant, Ned Sullivan, Keith McCarthy-Morrow, Paul Pratt, and all these amazing guys that I had the privilege to work with. Because at the beginning this was just a product. It was just cream and whiskey that came together. But they actually transformed it into a brand over many years. Yeah, and they were amazing people, and they it was like riding on a runaway stallion, and they managed to get it into shape, and they and go in the right direction. And so it's a testament to them. I think the book goes in a different direction, but it's those people I certainly want to mention this evening because they're the guys who made it happen.
Great. Tell me, you then went on to create Beru Vodka. That was obviously outside of the. Was that inside or outside of the Gilbey's?
No, that was outside. So, around 1998, 99, I can't remember the exact time. Diageo was formed, which was, before that, Bailey's was part of Grand Met.
Yeah.
Diageo was formed, and I left with a good friend of mine, David Phelan, who was also in Bailey's. We left to set up Beru with a joint venture with Carberry Co-op down in West Cork, and Terra, which was a bottling company, and Patsy McKevitt up in County Cavan. And we created that brand from nothing and developed that business over a period of years. Very challenging. I tell you, we were probably a bit naive when we got into it, but we got there in the end, and we made a success of it.
Excellent. I meant to ask you about brands, because obviously brands is a very big part of the drinks industry. And you've been at the heart of some very successful brands, and obviously Gunpowder Gin is one of those as well. For you to explain to us who might not be so knowledgeable about brands, what defines a brand?
It's a great question. I mean, sometimes I find it hard to explain. I give you a good example. we could do some blind research today. So we would take maybe a bottle of St. Brendan's cream liqueur and a bottle of Bailey's, and we could put it into various glasses and sample it. And, it's possible that 50-60% of the people might say, well, you know what, I prefer the St. Brendan's.
Yeah.
But yet St. Brendan's would be a relatively small brand in size compared to Bailey's. And the difference is the brand, and it's the relationship that the consumer has with that particular product. So it's really delivering at an emotional level as well as a functional level, and getting your story across and doing that in a way that engages with consumers. Sometimes, it just works. With Drumshanbo Gunpowder Irish Gin, I pinch myself every day. There's a little bit of magic in that brand, and it just works. I've obviously developed other brands, and they haven't been as successful. So Bailey's just works, and but but you need a little bit of luck, you need a bit of magic, and you need a little bit of an X factor. And it's no different than watching the X Factor, which is the one that's actually going to rise to the top, and that people connect with at a very, very visceral and very instant level. And that's the beginning of a brand. Every decision we make in life, just about, there's an emotional dimension to the decision.
Yeah.
Even if it's at a very low level, and that's what defines a brand.
Yeah. From the outset, did you know you were working with winning brands? I mean, did you know Sheridans, Bailey's, the gin were going to be successful?
No,
did you have an inkling, or?
Well, now when I was involved in Bailey's was well up and running. I wasn't around at the early days. I was lucky to join a winning brand and learn from them. The same with Carlin's; it was well up and running. Mm-hmm. But what I learned in those days, there was brands like Malibu that came around, and there was many other brands that came into the stable, and it was some guy in Africa or in South Africa or in Massachusetts or Connecticut or something created a brand, and the next thing it works, and you found out very quickly that just going through the process of creating a brand and the way things are done to a large extent now, it doesn't always work. And some of the great brands that you see today were semi-accidents. Yeah. And I try and keep that level of creativity and freedom in everything that we do, so that we don't overanalyze it, and follow our instinct. And I'm big into following my instinct and good karma around the brand. And does it feel right? Does it connect with people?
Yeah. Is that something that you took with you after leaving Bailey's?
Yes.
What are the skills that you think you took from Bailey's and have applied it since?
Gosh, I suppose I learned so much in Bailey's because it was very old-fashioned when I started working there. People think that this is crazy, but your shoes had to be polished every day. Your hair had to be tidy. Your car had to be clean. It was run like a military. It was very old school, very old-fashioned. When you went to the market, so let's say I was looking after the United, which I was looking after the US. You never went to visit your importer without going and spending 3 or 4 days in the field to find out what was really going on, talking to retailers, putting your nose and your head into the trough and seeing what was going on. And I learned very, very quickly that I could learn so much by just talking to people, being connected with the front end of the market, particularly with salespeople, particularly with retailers. I learned to respect them. And then when I go to the meetings, I'd often find that I actually knew more about what was going on than the importer, because they were so far removed from reality, and it often created tension. And to this day, I spend a huge amount of time in the field, listening, talking, and as marketeers, I often say, we are the servant of the salespeople and Mr. Retailer. We're there to support them. We're not there to dictate. And that has served, I think, me pretty well over the years.
Yeah, you're very much a follow your gut man, though, as well. You follow your instinct. I mean, I've heard you speak before at certain tastes, various tastings, and you do kind of follow your instinct. So obviously, you've honed in a skill there to identify what it is that the consumer wants.
Yeah, I'm following my instinct, having I suppose spoken and asked a lot of questions and listened to to the customer. I also have a very, very strong team within that team I'd have a group that I really trust, and we will kick it around and together, and then eventually somebody has to make a decision on it, and ultimately it's my call, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I do try and follow my instinct, having listened to everything about and it might be that, listen, we've heard what everybody's had to say. The customer says the bottle should be red with green spots, and we say, well, actually, you're not going to get that. We're going to give it to you a different way, but we've listened to you, and we just follow our gut, and off we go. Yeah. But I have a very, very strong team, and they are from very disparate backgrounds. I have a marine biologist. I have who's in marketing. I have a kind of a tech guy who looks after some of our key markets. I have people from hospitality looking after certain parts of the business. So I have a real mixture of talent. These guys are amazing, and I depend on them for a lot of the decisions we make.
So when you're, and I'm trying to delve into here your business acumen, I suppose. What are the prerequisites, or the absolute prerequisites for even having a chance at success within the drinks industry?
God, well, I think you need to have a brand that is going to connect with the consumer. Yeah. So you want your brand to do the heavy lifting for you, but it must also connect with Mr. Retailer, because he's a gatekeeper, and Mr. Bar owner, to get to the consumer. So you really need something that, if you're starting from zero, you really need to have something that's a bit of a wow. It's going to get, that's going to get a connect, going to get a reaction. Obviously, the quality has to be top notch. It has to have a story. Authenticity now is becoming a huge thing. Which, is it real? Is it a fake? Are you exaggerating? All that kind of stuff, particularly in the whiskey area, is becoming very important. So there's no magic bullet. I don't get it right all the time. And we get it right some of the time, thank God. But it's also just being honest all the time, and perfection is the enemy. So being prepared to live with uncertainty and imperfection, and to the point that you get it to where it needs to be. So, the first time you put it out, it may not be perfect, but you've got to listen, you've got to learn, and you've got to make changes and adjust.
So obviously timing is a critical component then. Obviously, if you're waiting for 100% perfection, you may never get out there.
You may never get out there, and sometimes you just have to jump. And if it's good enough, then you can make the improvements.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back to the original Baileys, and I don't know where the pack was dreadful. The bottle, believe it or not, was the original Redbreast whiskey bottle, because they couldn't afford a mold. And but over time they developed that into the brand that it is today. I'd say it's probably gone through about 20 to 25 brand enhancements, maybe more, maybe 30. So if they waited for perfection, they would never have gone anywhere.
Yeah, I meant to ask you, actually, while you were working for Bailey's and Gilbey's, they did bring out a whiskey, which has become a bit of a collector's item, actually, because it didn't really see a full release. What was the story with that? What happened? And it didn't actually join the mainstream.
Yeah, that's a great point. It was there around the time I was there. So David Phelan, my good buddy, he developed this project within the company, and I think at the time the whiskey was finished in a cask that had contained Baileys. Yeah. So it was a tremendous whiskey, but I think there was some issue around the technical file, or there was no technical file at the time, but probably with the Whiskey Association or Scottish Whiskey Association at that time. So it got canned. Right. So that's what happened to it. So it never went any further.
That was
as
it.
Far as I know.
Yeah. You do see it prop up in auctions, or you see it in the odd bar sitting up there.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is as a whiskey. I've never got to try it, but it's always one that people do talk about, actually.
Yeah.
You know, as
yeah.
you know, with the weight of Bailey's behind it, you would have thought, you know, that's going to be a winner.
It's a cool idea, even today.
Yeah. And probably today you might be able to get away with it with the different cask finish.
Yeah, you might be able to. Yeah, I don't. You know, I'm not the full expert on what you can do with something like that. I don't know, but it would be interesting.
Yeah,
if it was possible to do it, it could be very interesting.
And another really important part of any distillery and any whiskey company reaching success is distribution. Yes. And you did set up with John Dillon. You set up the Dark Halcyon, who are probably one of the very largest distributors in Ireland of wine and spirits, and that's been hugely successful.
Yeah, I mean, we set that up in 2005. John is somebody I respect very much. He came from Diageo. I worked with him in Gilbey's. He runs that operation on a day-to-day basis. Initially, that was very much focused in the on-premise, hotels, restaurants, and even up to the beginning of COVID, it was very much in that space. But since COVID, we've pivoted the business into retail. Sure. So yeah, we have a wonderful array of brands. We represent, you know, on the Irish whiskey, obviously, all the Shed brands, the Drumshanbo, single pot still, but we also represent the Walsh brands. We represent Nikka whiskey from Japan, Diplomatico rum, and some really excellent wines and spirits. And yeah, it's a good business, tough business, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
You know, doing
well, I did see turnover of 13 million last year. Was it something big?
Yeah.
You know, obviously this year will be.
It'll be lower.
Yeah. It'll be lower. No doubt.
Yeah, but it's a tough area. But listen, you know, we're very gritty. We have a great team at Dark Halcyon. We're very resourceful, and we plan to be here the other side of COVID.
Excellent. What do you think is going to mean the other side of COVID? What's going to bring it about? Is it going to just fizzle out, or is it we're waiting for a vaccine, or are we just looking for people to accept that this is something that we have to live with? How do you see that playing out?
God, you know, every day I change my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally am putting my store in the vaccine, and you know, once the vaccine becomes available, and hopefully they will crack it. I think that will be a game changer. So, you know, the vaccines to me is the key. Otherwise, this thing could go on for quite some time. Yeah. So I'm hoping that a vaccine in the next 6 to 12, 9 months will be getting out there, and that'll take the edge off it. Plus, you know, they're learning how to treat it better. It's pretty.
It's pretty daunting, but hopefully, we'll see the other side of it soon enough. 2013, you made a trip to Drumshanbo.
Yeah.
County Limerick.
Leitrim.
Obviously, there was a prelude to that, and you had decided that you wanted to produce something, enter the whiskey business primarily, I suppose, first, was it? And then, what was the process there?
Well, the process was I had looked for other possible locations in and around the Greater Dublin area, and every one that I looked at, you know, we were at the end of the crash, and I guess there was just with every property there was some problem with NAMA or something else, you know, in terms of the planning, and the whole thing was just very complicated. My parents had met in Drumshanbo. I knew about it, and John Dillon had mentioned to me that there was an opportunity to go up there and have a look at the food hub, which is a social enterprise where they had lots of space. So anyway, I went up and I met the local folk at the 12th of December 2013, which was at the end of the crash. And at that time, I don't know if anybody remembers, like we were all worn out with the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the place wasn't in great shape. But
was that an old jam factory, Laird Jam?
The old Laird's Jam Factory. But the people I met were incredible. I met the local community, the local county manager, the local councillors. They all showed up, and within 24 hours, I said, "Guys, I'll come. We'll do it." I asked them a number of questions in terms of support, and they just couldn't have been more helpful. And to this day, they have been with us every step of the way in terms of supporting us and helping us overcome obstacles, as there are always obstacles. And the reward for them is that we're committed to Leitrim and Drumshanbo for years and years and years. And we're employing now close to 50 people.
Yeah, fantastic for a community that was pretty ravaged by the downturn.
Pretty ravaged, yes. I mean, they'd lost a lot of jobs. And the people that we employed, many of them hadn't worked for, which was interesting, hadn't worked for up to 8-9 years. And in fact, some hadn't worked at all.
Yeah.
And one by one, we brought them in initially under the Job Bridge scheme, trained them, and bit by bit, they have proved to be tremendous contributors to the business, highly skilled, highly motivated, very committed, and they're the reason that we're successful. Yeah,
I have to say you've been very generous in your praise for your fellow workers and your staff and the community of Leitrim. They've made you ambassador of Leitrim, is it? What was the award they gave you?
No, I'm now an official ambassador. I have a big plaque. So Excellent. If anybody is interested in locating to Leitrim, their business or want to go there, they have my number and they call me.
Yeah, excellent.
No, it's good fun though, and I'm delighted to represent Leitrim.
Excellent. And what was the process where you actually decided, I want to set up a distillery? Firstly, why? I mean, you have a very successful business. You have some other business ventures and we talked about those briefly. But, what was the thought process for saying, I want to create a distillery in my own whiskey?
Well, I felt, I suppose, I was getting to the point that I felt if I wanted to create something really special, I couldn't really do what I wanted to do the way I wanted to do it without actually producing it myself. Yeah. So that was kind of the motivation. And then a lot of acts of God in terms of meeting, Volker Dietrich on the equipment in the Bodensee in South Germany by accident. So there's a lot of accidental meetings along the way that gave me the confidence to go for it and to invest. And, again, we're talking about the brand thing earlier, not knowing what the outcome might be. We started distilling on the 21st December 2014. I had no idea what the brand would look like. I had no idea what Drumshanbo gunpowder would look like at that stage. But we'd start and I'd work it out. I'd work it out later. I can remember doing business plans for Enterprise Ireland, not having a clue how I was going to pay them back. But the business plan looked pretty good, and I did pay them back. So, I mean, that's the way I've operated. But I had the belief, I suppose, in myself and the guys that we'd find a way. And we would get there, but I didn't have all the answers up front.
Yeah. Have you always been a risk taker? Has it always been an entrepreneurial spirit? Was it a family thing, or?
Well, yes, it is in the family. Yeah. I suppose I'm used to dealing with uncertainty. I'm probably better at dealing with it now than I was in the beginning. It doesn't suit everybody. It is scary at times. And you will always have the curveballs and that hit you and so on, but it does motivate you to, get off your ass.
Well, necessity is a great motivator, isn't it?
Yeah, and certainly that fear is a great motivator.
Yeah. But you started the business with Enterprise Ireland funding of 275,000. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes,
and then was there more to be matched and more to be raised and private investors?
No, I mean, this is an incredible story. No, I put in $1 million of family money and my own money, and that was where we started. Yeah, I went out looking for money at the time, and I got refused by everybody. I mean, everybody. And I had a pretty good track record. And but come back, Pat, when you've made some sales, and come back when you've they all and then what I realized is the seed capital in Ireland was for alcohol, for food and drinks there was no seed capital. Yeah. They were happy enough to put money into technology at that time, but they were not happy to put it into my business. Having said that, I would like to go back and personally meet them all and thank them for turning me down, because they don't own any of the company, and our company is quite successful. Had they come in, it might have been quite different. So one of the reasons, I guess, that we've been quite successful is that I don't have to look over my shoulder all the time dealing with investors, because we don't have any investors.
You're 90% owner of the company, is it? Or 100%?
Yes. Well, 90%, and Dark Halcyon owns 10, of which I own a significant part. Yeah, so it's, that's it. Now, it does mean that obviously you carry the can, but what it also means, you can move quickly, and my reporting to shareholders is quite limited because I am the shareholder.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah,
it's nice not to have a boss.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't afford to screw up, but it's it means we can move quickly and speedily, and I think it's been a big part of our success. That I'm able to do that.
So you laid down your first whiskey 2014 December 21st, and was gin always in your initial plan?
Yes, it was, and we actually put the gin still in from day one.
Right.
So it was in, and it was a multi-purpose distillery from the very first day. And in fact, we've had two companies, one from Norway and one from Japan, who've been over and have pretty much replicated some of the way we've gone about things. So yeah, we started to distill whiskey, and very soon then we started to look at gin. But whiskey was the first thing we did.
And this is what I have. I actually have your sample from the first cask here. The one bottle of 46%, I think this one it was. But the one released before Christmas. So it's fantastic whiskey. It was a great first release. What's your vision going forward in terms of what you're going to be producing whiskey-wise? Because this is unusual in itself in that it's finished in Oloroso, but there's an element of oats in it as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Drumshanbo single pot still is first of all, single pot still is our focus. I love single pot still. I am also a huge fan of what Irish distillers have done with their brands and Redbreast and so on, which is world class. So pot still is our focus. We distilled with oats. It's triple distilled. We bring it in and lay it down in bourbon ones, and also in Oloroso, and then blend after. It's about 5 years. What we found is that single pot still really needs needs to be in around the 5 years to work. It needs the extra time, whereas single malt maybe 4.5 years. Well, we will be looking at special expressions, further down the line. We're looking at Pinot Noir, we're looking at Marsala, we're looking at Acacia, we're looking at other things as well. We're also looking at some work around the rye area, and we also have some limited amount of single malt. So but it's all very much about creating world-class whiskey, and every drop of what we will sell will come from our distillery, so we won't be...
You haven't sourced any whiskey at all. It's all been your own stock, and actually, it drinks far older than a 4 or 5 year old. This particular whiskey, it's fantastic. It really is.
Thank you. And hats off to Brian Taaffe. He's our head distiller, and he's been a pleasure to work with. He came from the United States. He'd worked in Dingle. He'd worked in a number of distilleries and so on. But he has been the hero in all of this, and we work really closely together. And with his team, and with great equipment, and he is never under pressure to rush it. It's all about the quality and just giving it a little more time. Also, in the early days, just to mention, and I know this sounds a bit strange, but we invited Irish distillers to come up and visit us. So David Quinn and Brian Nation came up, and we asked them to kick the tires. This was probably about 18 months into it, and they came up and they were very gracious, and they did kick the tires, and they gave us some tips. And so we opened up at that very early stage, and that gave us a lot of confidence that we were on the right track.
Yeah. I mean, it was nice in the sense that you weren't rushed to have to release this particular whiskey early.
Yes.
And I think it's benefited from the fact that it hasn't. But
yes,
a lot of that comes down to the success that you've had with the gunpowder gin. And for anybody on the planet that hasn't seen the gunpowder gin, there's not many, it's a fantastic bottle and a great success. And I think last year you shipped over 1 million bottles, was it?
Yeah, thereabouts. So it's very important to us, and we ship all over the world. It's a very competitive business, and when the brand has done well, thank God. But it's not for the faint-hearted, because even today, if we're introducing it, the first reaction from a Mr. Retailer is, "Oh my God, not another gin, Pat. Can you take something else out of the bag?" So it's a very tough market, but we're punching above our weight, but we're not complacent, and we need to stay on it and make sure that we look after something that's very precious.
Yeah, like my last count, there were over 70 Irish gins on the market.
Yeah, sure.
all that come out in a very short period of time, and maybe there's 3 that are predominant. I mean, there's yourselves, there's the Joe Bucks, and there's the Shortcross gin, and I think you're way ahead of the others.
Yeah, and there's Dingle, of course,
and of course the Dingle gin as well. Yeah,
I was in a before all this lockdown. I was in a store in Italy near Milan, and he'd 650 gins.
Wow.
And I'm going, wow. Oh my God! And we're just one, and we're doing okay. Yeah. We're pulling. And everywhere you go, there's different ones. So you go to New York, they've got the local ones, and they got the international ones. And you go to California, it's the same, and same with France and everywhere. So it's a tough business, but it's we're doing okay.
Yeah, what is it about this that's actually captured the drink? Groundbreaking. It stands out on the shelf, but obviously it has to have that quality, and it does have that quality. But what is the whole thing, the whole attraction that people have kind of resonated with?
Sometimes I ask myself, because I can't work. If I'd known him, I would have done it a lot earlier. I think there's a bit of magic in the brand, the story, the liquid is really outstanding. Obviously the presentation, and it just seems to capture the imagination. And once people try it, they love it, and sometimes it just works. Yeah. And I find it hard to explain sometimes. Obviously, there's certain parts of the brand that we know are very important, but it just has a bit of magic, a bit of X factor, and people have taken to it, and all sorts of folks, from all age groups and all backgrounds. That's one of the most gratifying things. In Ireland, one of the things that's very important and that we see is the pride that Irish people have in the brand, which we're very chuffed with. So Irish people have huge pride in their big brands. They've huge pride in Guinness and Bailey's and Jameson and Tullamore and many of the other brands. But in this brand, they have a lot of pride, and that's just something that I can't explain it.
Is it a prerequisite for international success that your brand is strong at home and genuine?
I think being strong at home is big help, very important. I've been making this case to the politicians in relation to the smaller distilleries, particularly my role as chair of the Irish Spirits Association, which I have at the moment. For all these emerging distilleries and breweries, and they need to have a strong home base, or certainly get a degree of support in Ireland, in order that they can, when they go overseas to tell people about their brand, they're going to be asked, well, how's it doing in Ireland?
Yeah.
Oh, well, in Ireland, they want to put up these terrible labels on my brand, and the excise tax is the highest in Europe, and it's a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. Yeah. Well, that's not going to do you any good. So having a strong home base is certainly helpful. Yes, very important. And you will be asked.
Yeah.
Probably the first question will be asked by Mr. Importer in Belgium or how's it doing in Ireland.
Yeah. So last count I saw, you're in over 60 markets worldwide. And one of the philosophies that you do follow is you tend to work with smaller family-run distributors. What's the thought process behind that, Pat?
Well, that's probably more a practical thing, Sergios, in the sense that the multinationals, they tend to sell the brands that they own or they produce. So we end up working with private family-owned businesses, and it's worked a treat. So there's a second and third tier of companies around the world that in the various markets which are owned by families, maybe many of them intergenerational, and they're very, very strong in many of these markets, and you build up very close relationships with them, and I love working with them.
There you see a comment from Matt Pibb there. Drumshanbo is his biggest selling gin in France. So.
Oh, right. Sorry, somebody's saying they can't hear me. Sorry, can't see.
If you can increase the volume a little bit, Pat, actually.
Sorry, sorry about that, guys, if that's the case. Hold on.
I've got my headphones on so I can hear fine.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes, yeah.
Just putting this up a tiny bit more. Is that better, guys? Sorry about that.
I think that's a bit better. Yeah.
Apologies.
No, that's great. So, it seems to be certainly recognized abroad as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah, recognized abroad, but a lot of sweat and tears, and a lot more to do to hold our position.
Yeah. Your key markets at the moment, I presume America must be one of the biggest ones for you.
US is very important to us, yes. And US is, just saw some Nielsen results, and, in the US we're playing at a high level. And
yeah.
God, we're up with the Botanist and Aviator and some of these other brands. We're not as big as them, but we're in that territory.
Yeah.
We're doing, the UK is important. A number of European markets are very important to us. Ireland, travel retail was important and hopefully will be important again.
Yes.
But we have a nice spread, so we're not dependent on one market. We have a nice mix, which means I can sleep easier at night time. So if something was to go wrong in a market, it won't put us out of business.
Yeah, there's another comment there from Shamini in Norway saying that it really stood out as well. So, we've got a very international audience here today, which is fantastic. If anybody has any questions that they'd like to pose to Pat, please put them in the comments and we'll put them to Pat. Let me see.
I can't see anything here, but I'm sure.
No, I can't read one there. But okay, so you've built up the success with Drumshanbo. You have 60 international markets. Obviously, you're looking to new markets. What do you see those new markets being? Well,
I'll be honest with you. A lot of the markets that we're in, we need to grow them. I mean, they're the key markets. The US is obviously very important. Canada, South Africa, UK, France, Germany. So some of them we've only entered recently, but we have a long way to go to get to where we believe we can be. Eastern Europe is very exciting. Asia is exciting. The travel restrictions are obviously a problem for us all at the moment. There's only so much you can do from a Zoom call, but there's a lot more I think we can do in the markets that we're in.
So obviously your travel has been hugely curtailed, and I get the impression that most of your business, you like to do business face to face.
As much as we can, yeah. We like to be out in the field with our customers, and we like to, we work very, very closely with them, very hands-on, supporting them, listening to them. Yeah, we do, and that's really that was the Bailey's way when I worked in Bailey's. It's never left me.
Yeah. So work backwards from the customer.
Yes, I often describe it. This whole project as it's a bit like a triathlon. You build the distillery, you make the product, and you sell it. But everything starts from selling, and you work back. Building and making is challenging, but selling is the hardest bit of all. You know, it's really, really tough. And, you know, it's all about, you know, having sales, then you've got cash. If you've got cash, then you can sustain the business.
Yeah. So you've got a volunteer there as your brand ambassador in Norway. So
thanks very much, Shamini.
A definite fan. So obviously, the gin was a huge success, probably a much bigger success than you ever anticipated, if the truth be told. But whiskey is what the end game is, I suppose. What doors has it opened? And is there a notion of, I've had one really successful product. Is there a lot of pressure now to follow it up with a hugely successful whiskey? Is it a constraint or an opportunity, or how do you say it?
Oh, you mean after, when we brought? Yeah. So I think I understand what you're saying. So because Drumshanbo Gunpowder was so successful, or is so successful, when you bring out the whiskey, it's a bit like opening. I felt it's a bit like we were opening a new restaurant. So you have an existing one, now you open a new one, and you're going to be critiqued. So it does put a bit of pressure on you to make sure that you you stay in tune and you don't move off piste. So and it's good for you. And so we've been very careful and very considered. And you know, it was funny. I was speaking to Ali about 6 months before we released the Ali Alpine, our single pot still, and he was remonstrating with me. Do not release it early. You know, make sure it's right. And, you know, and it just was ringing in my ears. And I was saying to Brian Taaffe, we cannot do this until it's right. And we waited and we waited until we believed it was right.
Well, look, I mean, the attention to detail on the packaging alone, never mind. I think you have a bottle there, do you, in front of you?
I do indeed, yeah.
You just happen to have one there. I mean, the attention to detail on the packaging and the thought that's gone into it, and the contents are superb. So, you know, I think you'd be more than proud of coming out with something like that. I particularly like the brass ring around the cap.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice touch.
Thank you. Again, and it's got a beautiful cork.
Yeah, so a real cork. And what's it retailing now? Is it around the 70, 80?
It's actually at 60 euros, which is very good value for what it is.
Yeah.
The Norgal was up around the 80 because that was the first, but now we're in around the 60 euros.
Yeah. And are you using much of the same distribution channel that you have established through Gunpowder?
Pretty much in every case, yes. Which is helps enormously. So because just in terms of the time and the effort, pretty much everybody is doing both.
Yeah. And what can we expect to see going forward in terms of releases, Pat? You know, we have this pot still out now. Obviously, I don't think you've probably been able to put the big push behind it that you would have liked with everything that's going on. I presume, you know, March was when you were going to push this as a main product, if you like. What are the plans now?
Well, the big restriction we have is the amount that we have. I mean, it's on allocation. Honestly, it's done extraordinarily well. So way better than we'd anticipated. We're completely out of stock at the moment. We will be back, hopefully later this week. So I think for the next 6 to 12 months, you know, it will be just seeding the brand, making sure whatever we do it well, and we will be, you know, we would have more volume coming on stream, more stock coming on stream.
Yeah.
You know, 18 to 24 months from now, which will allow us to do more work and more expressions and more interesting things.
Yeah, that's a nice comment there from Brendan from Sheridans Distillery. You know, fair play to the contribution to County Leitrim as
Thanks
well
very
as
much, Brendan. Thank you.
No, I mean, it is a fantastic achievement for County Leitrim, and the visitor centre, I really hope it's a big success. And I know you're trying to build that into the Hidden Heartland trail and some Blue Way walks and the Arigna Mine and the Carrick Shannon and the River Shannon as well. But obviously the restrictions do have an impact. At the moment you have in the line of 20 people working on that in the visitor centre, is that right?
Yeah, between the the cafe, which is a significant employer, and the visitors experience, it's close to 20, at the moment.
Yeah.
We'll see, we've had a very, very nice start. We opened last Thursday, and we'll see, how long that'll be sustained, into Christmas time. But it's very encouraging. But we're very aware of the challenges of COVID, the challenges of the location in the wintertime. But we're getting a lot of support locally. Mm-hmm. And people who visited are really, they're really excited about their visit, and they're sharing a lot of stuff on social media. So hopefully that'll bring more people along.
Well, what's unique about it, Pat? What would be different to visiting Drumshanbo as opposed to any other distillery?
Well, I suppose it's only when you go there that you probably it's very hard to explain until you go. But I suppose the first thing I wanted to do, given our location and where we are and who we are, when they walked up to the distillery, anybody walking up, I would like them to say, "Wow, that is amazing. That's very interesting." And then as they go through the experience and the tour, and a really authentic tour, that they would come out the other side and say, "Wow, I really experienced something different and unique, and it was exciting, and it was that they're coming away with a real feeling for our brands and how we do things and the quality of our spirit and the story behind our brands." That's what I'm hoping for, and that seems to be what's happening. We have a beautiful glass house, so there's several elements to the business.
Yeah, you tell us through what somebody's going to experience when they do go. There's a picture of it on screen there.
Yeah, well, first of all, there is when you arrive and you want to go on the tour, you'll probably be booked in for your tour. The tour itself is very unique. You won't go on a tour probably like it anywhere in the world, to be honest. And I'm not going to give it all away, but basically it's a really interesting experience for about just under an hour, covering whiskey and Drumshanbo Gunpowder Irish Gin, and the opportunity to stand in front of the stills while they're working. We also have a wonderful gift shop, really first-class gift shop with all sorts of interesting things going on there. We have a wonderful bar called the Honey Badger Bar, which is in the Glass House. And that's where you have a drink after the tour, and you can also have another drink. We have a beautiful cafe called the Jackalope with wonderful local food. And it's just the whole atmosphere in the place, and the feeling that you get when you're there is pretty special. And you just have to come and visit.
Yeah. If somebody does want to visit, Pat, what's the best way to book?
Online at the sheddistillery.com, and to book it online. That's the best way.
Yeah. And is there a lead time or anything that they need to be aware of with the COVID?
It's pretty busy at the weekends, but I mean, it's all there. And obviously everything's organized under COVID, so it's very strictly managed. Temperatures taken at the door and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and masks worn inside. So, yeah, we have a pretty good program. And we're very conscious of COVID, and so we're managing that. We have the Fortune approved COVID protocols in place. Yeah.
Oh, obviously very unfortunate with the COVID. I'm sure you had expectations in the numbers that you were predicting to. What's it looking like, and what was your prediction? All going well?
Well, we're late, obviously, opening. I mean, part of the goal to open was to demonstrate to everybody locally and internationally that we're committed to Drumshanbo, and also, for 2021 and 2022, that people would realize that we are open, and we, because particularly some of the tour operators and so on, until you open it, they won't consider you.
Yes.
So we've done all of that. To be honest, it's day by day at the moment. Great start, a lot of support. Community has really rallied behind the project, and lovely flow of people really supporting it. And we'll see where it goes, and we'll at the moment, if it keeps going the way it is, we'll be okay.
Yeah,
and we'll get through all of this.
What are the projections? I mean, last year we were talking about a million bottles of the gunpowder gin. I think you have overall, you're staying level or slightly going ahead from last year's number.
Yeah, I mean, we will grow this year. How much? Probably 5-10%. But we will grow.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It is fantastic against the backdrop that we're in.
Yeah.
But some markets will be down, but some will be up. But overall, we will be ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's a significant investment in the visitor centre, Pat,
Huge.
and in terms of actually recouping that cost.
Yeah.
Long term, in the short term, certainly not. Long term, maybe, but obviously it's a huge brand building exercise as well, isn't it? I mean, is that where the value is?
You're absolutely right, Sergio. I mean, when you build something like this, if I had big, investors looking over my shoulder, they probably would have said, "Pat, what are you doing? You're crazy."
Yeah.
Because you may never get the return. But I think it's very important for our brand. It's very important to be able to show people where it comes from, the whole story behind the brand. I think it'll create a lot of energy and excitement in Ireland and internationally. It also shows that we're very much rooted in the community and we're not going anywhere. And it's a big project. If it may not pay back for 20 years, so be it.
Yeah. Matt Pibb is asking, are you going to release a second version to expand the range? I presume he's talking about the gin. Or are you talking...
Well, if it's the gin, no, we've no plans to do that. But on the whiskey, yes, we do plan to bring out some new expressions, but not for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're on the chair of the drinks industry there, and you verged pretty close to the edge there in terms of complicity with the technical file. Is that something that you see bringing out ones that may not be compliant with the technical file in terms of pot still? Are you limited by that, or are you going to stay within the realms of the technical file?
Well, we have done a number of mash bills, small quantities that would be outside the technical file in terms of higher amount of oats and so on and so forth. So we wouldn't be allowed to call it single pot still today, but maybe in the future we would be allowed to call it. I only really got involved after the technical file was put to bed. I mean, you have to start somewhere with a technical file. There's no reason why that file can't be polished and modified into the future to represent other points of view. And I know there are other points of view, some historical points of view that people have. And, I think that's a good, I think it's healthy that people bring these things up. And I'd certainly, I'm open to all ideas as long as, it supports the overall health of the category, into the future. We don't do anything to undermine it.
Yeah. What do you make actually of the Irish whiskey industry at the moment? With all the distilleries, what's coming out? Are you happy with it, or you think there's some dodgy whiskies coming out, or some,
I think the only area, listen, I think everybody in the industry pretty much, their bona fides are very good. There's some great people, in the industry right now. I think probably the biggest risk is that people will be under pressure to release whiskey a little earlier than they would like, in order to generate cash, and that's understandable. So, the COVID thing doesn't help. I can't comment on it because I don't know. But I suppose if you're looking at it from looking from the outside in, you'd say it's very important that we try and keep the standard up as high as possible and people to hang in there as long as possible so the whiskey is ready. Yeah.
I mean, I remember trying it around Christmas and I think I really enjoyed it. I think I gave a really nice review of it. And the one thing that stuck out to me was, I really enjoy it. I'd love to try it with more oats as well, just to see. Yes. But I think that is something unique about this, though, is the oat element in it. It does come through, even if it's only 5%, it certainly does come through. And looking forward to seeing what's going to come out in the future. Pat, I know you've had a really long day.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm sure you've been kept busy. I don't know if you're commuting every day between Dublin and Leitrim. Probably not, but
Not every day, but I'm up there a big part of the time.
Yeah. If there was any, because obviously you've been successful in business going, in a number of different areas. So we mentioned that you're involved in a pharmaceutical, you're involved as director in Walsh, you're Dark Halcyon, and also the equestrian arena as well.
With horseware, which I'm very proud of, yeah.
Horseware as well. So they're very different. Are there any common traits that you take between them and apply? So basically what I'm asking is, what are the key components, key secrets to business success?
The most important thing is, I mean, it's very interesting because I'm involved to say, I chair Ovell Pharmaceuticals, which is in the skincare business primarily.
Yes.
Wonderful company based in Dundalk and goes back to 1934, family run. But the one thing that's common to all the businesses, at the end of the day, it's the consumer that pays your salary. And you've got to listen to them, and you've got to be in tune with them, and you've got to try and get into the sweet spot with them so that you excite them and that they sufficiently that they want to buy your brand and they become loyal customers. So to me, that's number 1, 2, 3. And not to be saying, personal opinions are not relevant. It's what's relevant. It's what works at the consumer level. That's what's really relevant. That you're exciting your customers. I think the other aspect is to build a great team around you.
Yeah.
That in my case, that team, they don't have to be astronauts and highly. They just need to have a great attitude. Good work ethic, and then we can train them and get that energy going, and great things happen. And good karma. It's critical.
I've heard you mention the karma a lot of times in a lot of different circles, and I have to say I agree with you. It's something not necessarily tangible and easy to recreate, but it is important, I think.
You don't want negative energy around the place and people pulling it down. And obviously, you've got to deal with reality and all that kind of stuff. And you'll have bad days as well. But you need a positive environment and good people with you. Yeah. And then great things will happen.
Yeah, have to agree with that. One last question to let you go, Pat. If somebody turned around tomorrow, a big corporate comes along, big multinational, and says, here's 100 million for the Shed, what's going to be your answer? Somebody that has no, it's not.
I never did this for the money. Never started this. It's not about money. And we're having, we're enjoying it. We're building something very exciting. And I'm working with intergenerational businesses out there, my daughter's working in the business as well. So, I'm hoping this business will go on for many years to come past me, although I'm hoping to be around for a long time.
Actually, we haven't mentioned your good wife as well, Denise, who I know has been
hugely important,
heavily involved in the business. And are the rest of the family involved as well, or?
I have a daughter, Roisin, involved. She's in college, but she helps out. But I have a great team. And the visitors' experience was Eva Kelly. She's a daughter of Bill Kelly and Kelly's Rosselair. She did an incredible job in putting all of that together. On the marketing side of Sean McGowan.
There's yourself and Denise now. I think it's not the first cask you're filling in.
Yeah, fair dues. But we've just a marvellous team.
Yeah, and is that you obtaining the ambassador role?
Yes, from the Cahirloch, that's Enda McGloin in Leitrim County Council. So now I am a Leitrim. Yeah, I am an ambassador.
Honorary Leitrim man.
Yeah.
Listen, Pat, it's been fantastic talking to you, and I hope people got an insight of what it is that you're about, and obviously a bit of better understanding about the brand as well. Been hugely successful in multiple brands across different sectors. So, these things don't happen by fluke, unless you're the most lucky man in the world. But, I know you attribute a bit to luck, but you've always been very encouraging, I think, to other companies starting up as well, and always had some great advice. So, thank you very much for doing that. And thank you. I'm sure, certainly on behalf of the Leitrim people, I'm sure they're immensely proud of you as you are, I know, of them. So this is just an example of what, you know, a grassroots project can do for a community. And I have to applaud you for that. And you should be very proud. And wish you the best success going forward.
Well, thank you very much, Sergio. You've been a great stalwart for the industry, and to all the people listening. And I know many of them are in the industry, and I wish them all well. It's a tough time for everybody. But we just all have to pull together and muscle through the whole thing. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
No, thank you. And I'm sure we'll be down to visit you very soon.
Great stuff.
And enjoy the rest of the evening. And until then, stay safe and stay well. And every success going forward.
All the best. God bless. Right. Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So that was Pat. I hope that gave you a good insight. Before you all rush off and disappear, I'm going to try and announce the winner of this fabulous Teeling Renaissance 2 that we had running during the last couple of weeks. It's the Renaissance 2. It is the 18-year-old single malt, and it's a fantastic addition to anybody's collection and fabulous to drink. I've had a sample out of that. So what I would ask is, I'm going to pick one of our listeners now to pick a number between 2 and 495. So I'm going to, Shamini is there. Shamini, can you give us a number between 2 and 495? I have my magical spreadsheet open, which I'll share. And just to show transparency that we do actually randomly pick a winner. So, Shamini, are you there? No pressure. Any number between 2 and 495. And what I've done here in this spreadsheet is I've actually listed all the entries, and I'm going to sort them by this random number, and then whatever number Shamini picks, whatever row number will be the winner. So what do you got? 113. 113. Okay, so let me sort this first. So I'll sort it by the random number and go to row 113, was it? 113. There we go. And our winner is Aina Brady from Instagram. So congratulations to Aina. This lovely bottle of Teeling Renaissance Release 2 will be on your way to you, and hope you get to enjoy it. So thank you to Teeling for that as well. They've been great supporters of the show. And everybody, if anybody has any questions about the show or who we're going to be having going forward, we've got a very interesting guest again next week. Thank you all very much for joining. If you've enjoyed the show, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and the link will come up there shortly. So stay safe. Hope you're all very well, and look forward to talking to you next week. Good evening.